The Metis Tech Show.
Welcome to the Metis Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
I like how you guys bounce back and forth between heat pump talk and food talk.
The Metis Tech Show.
Mitsubishi.
So Ty, you were talking earlier that you've been all over Asia, so you must have seen some really, let's just say, interesting
I have.
food choices.
I have seen some really interesting stuff. I'll keep it narrow, not to gross anybody out, but I keep it to some unusual choices.
Yep.
So when I was in Laos a very poor country, and they have a thing called sticky rice, and so you don't even use chopsticks. You just eat it with your hands, and then there's ants in with the sticky rice, and so you just eat the ants with the rice because it's also protein. The ants are protein, so you eat that with it. And then one of the keys is
The ants alive or dead?
they're alive, yeah.
Okay.
And they're purposely put in there.
No, they end up in there, and they don't have any way of keeping them separate. So you just eat the ants as you're eating the rice.
Okay. Take me a little get to used to, but
When you're hungry, you get used to it pretty quick.
Well,
So
survival courses will tell you if you're stuck in the woods, they'll tell you to rip out the bark and eat the bugs and eat the ants because the protein's there. It sounds gross, but it's either that or death.
exactly. And one of the keys is when you're eating the sticky rice is you want to make sure you're eating the white sticky rice and not the black rice. Because the reason that they color the rice, they're getting no refrigeration, no air conditioning, no storage, like everything's in grass. And so they will dye the rice so you can't tell the difference between that and mice, where mice had been. So if they dye
Mice
the rice,
droppings.
so to this day I still can't eat black rice because of that mindset that when I was traveling through Asia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like wild rice.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't tell the difference between rice and mouse droppings. That's a problem.
That just changed my outlook on rice.
Well, here we don't have to worry about that, but like in other countries, it was
and it's-
things that really puts it into perspective. For
Well,
me.
we didn't have to worry about it until now. No. So what else have you seen?
Oh, so I was in Cambodia working at an orphanage there, and they had they just put whatever they could get at the local market. So it'd be like whole fish, like everything, the scales, the eyes, they wouldn't cut anything out, and they just boil it all together. And the kids would pick up plastic from the side of the road, and that's what they would use to cook it on. So there's all this black smoke and everything coming out, and then they would just put it on the plate, and people would just eat everything, and they would suck all of the food off of the bones, and they'd put everything back in the center, and they would put it back in the next meal for flavoring. And it was really difficult getting used to that. But after a few days, you get hungry, so you're like, yeah, we'll give it a try.
When in Rome.
Yeah.
Oh, you just reminded me. Paul Gradius used to work for us. He retired a few years ago, and he was in, I forget which city it was in South. It might have been Mexico City, but they had one of these farmers markets, and they got the chickens, plucked chickens, hanging there for people to come in and buy. And I wasn't there. He told me this story that there was the guy spraying the dead chickens, the chicken with Raid.
Wow.
And so Paul asked the guy, why are you spraying that with Raid? He goes, to keep the flies off. The Americans won't buy it if there's flies on it.
Yummy.
So anything else? Is there like, I'm afraid to ask, but is there anything else actually weirder than that, or just as weird? Or
Oh yes, but I don't want it's scarred me seeing some of the things I've seen, so I don't know that I want to drag anybody else down.
Yeah,
because
we'll
not telling
leave
the
that
difference between rice and mouse poop, that doesn't scare me at all.
That's actually like the nicest thing to know. Like some of the other stuff gets pretty, but again, you're traveling, you're living with the locals. You get hungry, and so you eat things you wouldn't normally eat. And
it's either that or starve. So.
Exactly. I did lose a lot of weight. It's a really good diet program. So if you want to lose a lot of weight, that's the way
Come
to
back
go.
and weigh
Fantastic.
160 pounds.
Yeah, I was telling Ty before the show that my wife and and I told you this before, Paul, we're very good friends with the family that owns a Chinese restaurant in my town, and they're always feeding me these bizarre meals. Like, just because they know I'm going to eat whatever they make. And it's not on the menu. It's just things that they're cooking up in the kitchen in the back. And it could be like duck soup or just bizarre things. Like they had one thing with shrimp and rice, and it was wrapped in a banana leaf. And that was good. So they had like a sweet and a sour. But they gave me something the other day, and I was excited. And they're like, oh, try this soup. So they slide over a little bowl of the soup, and I look in, and it looks like as if someone had like water, it just took water and just dumped a bunch of Italian seasoning in it. So it was just had that, bunch of colors in there. So I take a spoonful, and it was freezing cold.
Oh.
So right away I got a mouthful of this soup, and my wife's like, is it good? And I'm like, so I swallowed it, and it took everything. I can't eat cold things like that. But I'm thinking it's supposed to be hot, and soup is supposed to be hot.
Yes,
Right.
So she's looking at me, and she's like, you like? And I'm like, yeah. And I don't want to disappoint her. And I said, is this supposed to be cold? So she says, oh, yeah, the colder the better. Like just outside of freezing is where you want to eat the soup. So I was like, oh, this is so good. So she walked away, and I kind of like just chugged it down, because if there was a trash, I would have threw it right out. And my wife was laughing. I'm like, yeah, I just can't do cold rice,
Gonna
cold
eat something
soup.
horrible. Well, they should give it. Now we know, Ty. Offer him some black rice, and he's going to eat it because he can't say no.
Yeah, and that's a great thing. You had ants in the white rice, so you could tell when they were in there. You can see the difference. But I remember being at a friend's house one time. We were kids, and we went in his pantry, and we grabbed a whole handful of Oreo cookies, and we're sitting there eating these Oreo cookies, and I'm looking at him, and I see an ant crawl out the corner of his mouth and up his face.
Oh.
And so I look down at the cookies, and my hands are covered in ants.
That's gross.
It was sitting there screaming, ah! We threw all these cookies out in the garbage. Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah. So my wife bought this jug of maple syrup from the local Cub Scouts. They have a sugar house. They get the sap, they melt it down, and she had it in the pantry. Opened it, one of those flip lids. A little plastic jug, like maybe a pint or a quart jar, whatever it was, and I always refrigerate my syrup after I open it. But she had it in the pantry, and the flip lid wasn't fully tight. I go to pour it on some pancakes, and there's all these little specks in it. And I go, what is this? And I'm looking at it. It's all those little tiny little brown ants. Mm-hmm. There was hundreds of them. They crawled in there and all died in there. And it's like, okay, let's refrigerate this from now on. They're supposed to be throwing this. I'm not eating that pancake. But in Japan, I did have chicken hearts. And I had chicken feet, whatever. It didn't bother me to eat that. And I don't want to get too graphic here, but I don't know if you guys remember this, but back in the 80s, they came out with this video, The Faces of Death. And there was actually a place, I forget where in the world it was, but basically they put this live monkey's head through a table, and you beat its head in and eat its brains.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah,
I have not seen that.
Yeah, it was awful.
I don't want to, but
it was awful. I'm not eating going anywhere near that. But it's just like
Delicacy.
Listen, you never know. Who was the first person that looked at the lobster and said, "Huh, I bet you that looks good to eat."
It was actually poor people's food originally.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the whole thing. They used to feed it to prisoners because it washed up on the beach, and then they used to get mad. We're sick of lobster every day.
So this banter is almost as disturbing as the snapping turtle banter that we did.
Oh yeah, with a Clifford.
Yes.
Yeah. He was talking about the way to the
Clifton from
Clifton.
Esco.
Yeah, the way to skin the turtle is to put a hose in its mouth and clamp it down with channel locks.
No.
And then I was like, what? It was awful. It was just very disturbing. Anyway, welcome everybody to the Metis Tech Show. If you're still listening. I'm Paul Shives. We are still at the 2025 U.S. Heat Pump Summit in Worcester, Massachusetts. With me is Steve Pimentel.
Hey,
Steve
everybody.
Zanai. And joining us once again, or maybe for the first time, depending on what order we release these, is Ty Branaman.
Hello, everybody.
Ty, so for those who, and again, just for everybody, I think most people know this, we've mentioned enough times, but we record these episodes and we edit them and we release them randomly. So we really don't have a set schedule. So I don't know when this one's going to release versus the one we recorded earlier. But just in case people haven't listened to it or released this one first, tell us a little bit about you, what you do, how you get started in the business, and so on.
Sure, I'm just a trades guy. I love what I do. I love solving problems. I love learning new stuff. I love working with my hands, and it's taken me when life takes everything away from you, it can't take away your skills.
Correct.
And I was able to start over in an entirely different city, an entirely different market, because I had the skills, and I was able to start over when everything was taken from me. And then from there, it's taken me around the world. I've been able to travel around the world with these skills. Even when I was working in Australia, I couldn't do HVAC work directly because of the laws. I understood psychometrics and air and mechanics. I was able to work at a sugar mill, and I was able to apply that same knowledge. And so no matter what, I've always had something that I could start over anywhere in the world with these skills. And then from there, just keep learning new stuff, and keep sharing what I learn.
Yeah, and you teach now. You do a lot of training. You're on YouTube.
I do social media stuff. It's just really teaching and sharing. I have my YouTube channel that's more just like school, more structured, and then I have my other social media that's just random answering questions, or we do science experiments, and it's really interactive, where I try to be as much as possible. And then now work for the Grit Foundation, where we help get kids excited about the trades, and also tradespeople, for them to be excited about the skills we've taken for granted, like using a tape measure and a drill, and these things that we've done for so long. We just expect everybody to know it, but we had to be taught those once upon a time.
That's good. You just reminded me of something. When I started teaching at a school, entry-level students into HVAC, and I was talking about, quarter inch and half inch, and these dimensions, and nobody knew what I was talking about. And I like most of the kids, well, they're all high school grads or GEDs, but most of them are probably 18 to 23. I'm like, do you guys know how to read or tape measure or ruler? They said no. So I put up the overhead thing, whatever it was called, I forget, the overhead projector, and I put on their tape measure, and I put my pencil on this. What is this? And they go, it's 2.5 inches plus a little line. I go, what? So I had to pause what I was doing and teach a segment of class on how to read a tape measure, and I had to test them on it, and it was like, I was shocked. But they couldn't read a tape measure. It's all those little useful skills I think they've gotten away from. But I'm glad what you do. I'm happy about what you do with the Grit Foundation, because as you and everybody else in our industry knows, we have a shortage of people. I think we're going to lose 30 or 40% of our workforce in the next 5 or 6 years. And we need people to come into this trade, to get interested in this trade. And it's a really good trade. It's been good to me. I started off in a guy in a van, and I went from being a guy in a van to being a director of education at a school, after being an instructor, and then the manager of the training department for a big manufacturer like Mitsubishi. So it all depends on what you want to do. There's a lot to this industry.
Yeah, definitely.
I always compare it.
It's been
to
good to me, that's for sure.
I compare it to the medical industry. You go to medical school, and you could be an orthopedic, you could be pulmonary, cardiologist. I can't even think of the other ones.
Yeah.
But
so many.
but you specialize.
Yeah, that's right.
You're going to specialize, because there are guys in this industry that have never done fossil fuel. There are a lot of guys I know that do oil and don't do anything else. Of course, there's heat pumps, refrigeration, commercial, residential, all kinds of
Transportation, refrigeration.
stuff. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a whole thing in and of itself.
Right.
There are guys working on these rail cars, the refrigerated rail cars and refrigerated tractor trailer trucks. There's marine refrigeration. My old boss brought in a heat pump that was on his boat.
Yeah.
And he used to take seawater. It was a water source heat pump, and it used seawater. I go, wow, that's pretty cool. Of course, it was all corroded. Anyway, I digress. So we have you back on again, and we want to talk about overcharge and undercharge, kind of like how a technician should approach it.
Before we start that, can we do just a quick little trivia thing?
Sure.
You may want to edit this out, but it's your choice, right?
No, we'll put it in.
So what does PSI stand for?
Pounds per square inch.
Yeah, good. What about PSIA?
Pounds per square inch atmospheric.
Good. What about PE/PSI?
PE/PSI. Now you got me. We're gonna edit that out.
No, we gotta put them.
Yeah, okay. You have that thing? Yeah, that's funny. That's like, it reminded me of that YouTube video that he goes, what is YES spelled? Yes. What does EYES spelled? And the guy's like, these teenage girls doing it to their dad. He goes, ES. And he goes, no, it's eyes. That's funny. I was all proud of myself that I knew what PSI was and PSI.
Ty, I'm learning that Ty's a jokester.
Yeah,
he's a jokester. He's a little dry.
No,
That's
I like
okay.
that. No, I like that.
I walk up to him before and ask him to come on, and I said, "Hey, what's up?" And he says, "I don't know, some lights and some rafters up here."
Well, he's probably in all his years has probably inhaled a lot of refrigerant, which displaces oxygen. So he's got some dead brain cells because of that. But anyway,
but we've done overcharge and undercharge as it pertains to Mitsubishi VRF, M&P systems. But let's talk about just refrigeration in general.
Sure.
What happens? Because the first thing everybody wants to do if you're inexperienced in this trade is go and grab a tank of refrigerant, your gauges, and just start throwing refrigerant in if the system isn't performing the way it should. And sometimes people do this before checking the basics.
That's right.
Checking filters, checking airflow. They got a frozen coil, and they're not checking airflow. They're checking charge, things like that. But Ty, let's run through. Let's start with a system overcharge, whether it's refrigeration or HVAC, split system, mini split, whatever it is. What are some of the symptoms that a technician can find?
Well, first off, we have to step back from pressure. Like everybody's jumps to pressures first. Well, pressure is a response of temperature. So the outdoor temperature is going to be an effect, the indoor temperature, and then the airflow. Airflow outside, airflow inside. And then you have your compressor, your metering device. So people jump to pressure first, and I want to jump to other things first. So if we're thinking about something being overcharged, think about it as being two tanks. We got a tank inside, which is our evaporator, our tank outside, which is our condenser, and in refrigeration, we'll have a receiver, maybe an accumulator. Yeah. But if we overcharge it, where's that refrigerant going to go? If we end up filling or overfilling one of our tanks, then we're going to have an issue. So if we overfill our condenser, where's that refrigerant going to go? If it's refrigeration and we go into a pump down, that refrigerant has to all be stored in the condenser or that liquid receiver, and there's no place for it to go. And then the system cycles off, it expands, and then you have some very bad things, broken things. But even with the condenser, if we stack that condenser full of liquid, we're having to make condensation with that refrigerant changing state in a very small area, which means it's going to affect the efficiency of that system greatly. It's also the TXV, if we're lucky enough to have one, it only has a range it can operate in. So once we overcharge, that refrigerant has nowhere to go. It's going to flood into the evaporator coil, and then it's eventually going to get liquid to our compressor, and it's a vapor pump. We don't want to get liquid into the compressor, and we're going to have damage. Now that damage may be soon, or it may be down the road, but it will have damage. So if we're thinking about being overcharged, think about where's that refrigerant going to go. So if I put too much refrigerant in the condenser, I'm going to have a lot of liquid in the condenser. So I'm going to have a lot of subcooled liquid in the condenser. So if I have a TXV, we can look and say, hey, I got a lot of subcooling, too much subcooled liquid, then I have a flooded condenser. And on my evaporator, it's the opposite. We can't measure the liquid. We can only measure the vapor. So we call that a superheated vapor. So if I have too much superheated vapor, that means I don't have enough liquid. Or if I have too small of vapor, just a little bit of vapor. If I have a glass and it just has a little bit of vapor in it, that means there's too much liquid. So a little bit of superheated vapor or none at all, we have a flooded evaporator coil. So depending on our metering device, we got a flooded condensing coil and a flooded evaporator coil. There's just too much dadgum refrigerant in that whole entire thing.
Right. This is what I love about you. It's the visualization that you bring to that, and that's so when I'm troubleshooting something, I'm a touchy-feely guy. I'm putting my hands all over the coils to see what the temperature differences are up and down the coils on the pipes and everything else. And that's exactly what I do. When I look at a superheat or a subcooling reading, to me, I have an imaginary place in that coil where the change of state is taking place. So if I got low superheat, I'm like, there's a change of state is not taking place. And the same thing, high subcooling, the change of state is not taking place, at least not where I want it.
Right.
So those visualizations I think are important for a lot of people, and that's how you got to look at it. You got to think of it just like that bottle you're holding up, thinking of a coil as a tank. Because other than its shape, it's the exact same thing you're looking at. So that's very good analogy.
And then I tell people when you're talking, especially with other people that are learning, don't just call it subcooled, call it subcooled liquid. So now we're associating that, hey, that we got liquid, and so associate the superheated. And I just always say superheated vapor. So we're always associating that it's a gas, it's a vapor form. And that just helps what's happening. It helps us visualize what's happening, helps us communicate. And even myself, it just helps me when I just add that extra word in there. Hey, I'm focused on subcooled liquid. It's liquid. How much? I've got too much liquid. I got too much subcooled liquid. Too much liquid. So we got a problem. Why do we have too much liquid in the condenser? And the same thing with that evaporator. Hey, I got too little superheated vapor, so not enough vapor. Yeah, I'm flooded with liquid. Why do I not have enough? Why do I have all this liquid? And where's it going to go? So those are the things that just help us see what's happening. And once we establish that baseline, then we can start looking at more information.
So you mentioned bad things could happen. So let's talk about some of those bad things. What is some of the damage that I can cause with an overcharge?
All right. So if we have and this isn't just with overcharge, this could also be with bad airflow. If we have a flooded evaporator, that liquid's coming back to the compressor. And most people think like the compressor is going to immediately break like it would with the reciprocating. And that's not the case. We can have long-term damage. As we get that liquid coming back, that liquid starts displacing everything else. That liquid's going to go to the bottom of the compressor. And as you're trying to pull oil up, you're getting liquid refrigerant up. And liquid refrigerant doesn't lubricate very well at all.
Nope.
So you get liquid refrigerant moving with all these moving parts, and you start ending up with gouging, wear and tear, and now you have all this metal moving back and forth without the lubrication, and it starts wearing it down, starts tearing it apart. And then you also can you're washing the oil away from those parts. You're also getting that liquid refrigerant on the windings, so you can cause winding damage. And then over time, you can only work so long without lubrication of bearings, and something's going to die. Or the off cycle, you get all that oil in that crankcase, and then when it starts up, it just foams up. Take soap and put it in water in a bottle, and then shake that bottle really fast, and you'll see all that foam action. You'll see that the water level actually will drop, and there's foam everywhere. What's happening in the compressor? As we have liquid in there and liquid refrigerant under the oil, when we have a pressure drop, it makes that liquid refrigerant explode, just violently exploding. And with it comes all the oil. So the oil is all the way up to the top of the crankcase. We get liquid into those moving parts. We can't compress the liquid. And also, we don't have lubrication. So we end up with a double hit. And so, so we're thinking about overcharged. That damage can also be associated with like not having enough airflow across the evaporator coil. We just end up with too much refrigerant in the crankcase where we don't want it.
Right. That's awesome. That's a great way of explaining that.
I couldn't do it any better.
Now, looking at amperage, what is my amperage going to do?
So that's a great question. People ask me all the time, what should my amperage be? And this is where the manufacturer really comes in important. So I know that Copeland, they have the Copeland mobile app, and you can actually enter in your numbers of what your pressures are going to be, what's happening with the system, and it will tell you exactly what your compression ratio will be, exactly what your discharge line temperature will be, and exactly what your amperage will be at those conditions. So when you talk about what's rated on the unit, that little stamp on the unit, that's like under the highest conditions that it's tested for. It's not a good reference.
No.
So what we're actually working at could be a low load day. We could be overamping and very far away from that rated number. So most manufacturers have the data. If you can find that data from them, you can look and see exactly. So much just an old school graph, but you have your suction pressure, your discharge pressure, and you can find out exactly what your amperage should be and the capacity of the system. You can find out how much refrigerant that compressor is moving under those very specific conditions.
That's awesome. To me, I always looked at amperage. I look at the nameplate to see what my max should be. That's important, but you should hopefully not be close to it unless it's a very, very hot day and the thing's doing all it can. It's one thing, but to me, amps is an indication of how much work the compressor is doing.
Right.
So if I see the lower the amps, the less work it's doing, the higher the amps, the more work it's doing. And if I've got more refrigerant in the system than there should be, and I've got liquid in that compressor is going to be working hard. So if it's 75 degrees out and you're at the max amps, that's a problem.
It is a problem, yeah, for sure.
A common misconception is I'm overcharged. I'm probably going to see a frozen evaporator. Is that the case?
No. So when I have a frozen evaporator, start with airflow number one. Let's check airflow. And don't tell me it's good. I want a number. What is our actual CFM? Give me some static pressure. Give me something to go with, because good is not a number. I see so many people replace TXVs because of an airflow issue. It could be the secondary heat exchanger in a 90 plus furnace, filters, undersized ductwork, crushed. I mean, the list is long for airflow. So once we eliminate airflow, then we can go down to the next thing. And I look at temperature. Is the indoor temperature too low? Because as the indoor temperature drops, so does your saturation temperature. But also the outdoor temperature. As the outdoor temperature drops, so does your head pressure. So the outdoor temperature drops, the head pressure drops. Now you have your metering device dropping the pressure again, and now your suction pressure is going to be low. Once it drops below 32, we start to freeze. And refrigeration, we do extra stuff to combat that.
Right.
With residential, we have to add extra components most of the time to be able to combat that. I love around the holidays going around the neighborhoods and seeing what units are frozen. Because they have all the guests come over, right? They have all the family over. They're cooking.
Yeah.
It's hot in the house. And what does people do? We could open a window and have free cooling, but no, we're gonna turn the air conditioner on. Well, the outside temperature is so low, the head pressure drops, suction is going to follow, and then next thing you know, you got a frozen coil. So after we look at airflow, we look at temperature, then we can look at restrictions. We could have a clogged up metering device or strainer or clogged up filter dryer, kink in the line. Any one of those restrictions can cause the pressure drop. And then the very last one I look at is refrigerant. And I want to make sure we eliminate everything else first before we just jump into that refrigerant.
So you haven't even put your gauges on yet.
No, I check everything else way before I get to that point. Yeah.
Yeah. The only time I've seen coils freeze on an AC system is when it's undercharged and it's been running for a while. But what's usually happens around here, it happens, April and May, or it happens in like late August, early September. We'll get a nice warm day. It'll be in the 80s. People didn't turn on their AC before they left to go to work. They come home at 3 or 4 o'clock. It may be 80 degrees outside, maybe 85, 90 in the house. They turn on the AC, and they have the set point for 70. So now you've got 10 to 15 degrees. You're going to have to drop the temperature. So that thing's going to run for several hours before, even if nothing else changes, it's going to run several hours before it brings down the temperature. But then what happens is it gets nighttime, the temperature falls into the 60s. High 50s or whatever, and the temperature means lower pressure means lower temperature, and the evaporator, and then it freezes. And then you show up the next day and say, hey, nothing's working. And there's a frozen evaporator, and, why did it freeze? Don't know, and I won't know until it's thawed out.
Right.
You can't throw your gauge, you can't do anything. You can't even check the airflow.
Yeah.
Because was it an airflow issue?
Yes.
Was it not getting any air, or was it just that the temperature fell, or is it, so at that point, it's, hey,
Switch the fan on to high speed, shut off your cooling.
I'll see you later.
And wait.
And when it comes to either whether it's temperature side, trying to explain to the customer, hey, you have the temperature of your house too low and you're freezing, or it's dropping outside, I could offer them some solutions. Hey, we can put in a low ambient kit so you can still have the cooling at that lower temperature. Or another solution is a freeze stat. Just a thermostat on the evaporator coil. So when it freezes, it cycles off the outdoor unit, keeps the blower running, so they're still having cooling. Right. But now I'm not having to go back trying to explain to them how they need to change their lifestyle. It's like, no, I can add some components to solve it if that is the issue. And a lot of times it's the issue, or they have an airflow issue combined with a lower ambient temperature, and it could be a combination of those things. Yeah. And so some solutions like that can get you by for a while.
Yeah, and if the ductwork's marginal, it just compounds it. Yeah. Yes. I've seen it when people, just a lack of education. I remember I installed an air conditioning for this guy, and the first time he went to use it, he said, it's not cooling. I said, what do you got it set for? What's the temperature of the house? It was 3 in the afternoon. He just turned it on at 2. And it was 98 degrees outside, and he had just turned it on. I said, well, let me explain to you how this works. Yes. It's going to be a while. It's education.
What a lot of people do is we only get hung up on pressures. So we start looking at a system as like, oh, well, my pressure's low. Well, airflow causes low pressure, frozen coil, dirty filter, all these things that we talked about cause that pressure to be lower. Right. I don't care what the pressure is. I want to know, more importantly, what the superheat is. How much refrigerant's in there. So I get people that will add refrigerant to get the pressure to go up. We're adding more molecules of refrigerant so the pressure goes up. But then how much liquid is in there? So if they're only looking at pressure, we're not seeing that we're overfilling that evaporator coil, and we're getting liquid back to the compressor, and we're looking at compressor damage. And they'll say, I've been doing it this way for 20 years. I was like, how long do your compressors last? Oh, they only last about 5 or 6 years. Well, there's a correlation there. There's a connection there. And then we can solve it. Hey, let's talk about how we can solve this. And if you give me numbers like superheat, I can tell you what's happening. And then also the return air temperature, I can tell you what's happening. So that evaporator coil, on single stage typical equipment, the evaporator coil is about 35 degrees below the return air temperature. We call that true TD, not delta T, delta T being air in versus air out. TD, the temperature difference between the return air and the saturated boiling temperature of the refrigerant on the suction side. And then if we look at those numbers, we can see, hey, my return air temperature is compared to my saturated temperature too far apart or too close together. Now I can start looking. It gives me a guide where else to go, other than just pressure alone. Like there's way more numbers that we can use to help out.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because to me, pressure has never meant anything. I look at a set of gauges and I never look at the pressure.
Yes.
I look at the temperature.
Yes.
I look at the corresponding temperature for whatever refrigerant's in there. And so, people used to ask me, what's the pressure? I was, I don't know, but it was like 35-degree evaporator.
Yeah, yes, absolutely right. And if my evaporator is below 32, it's going to freeze.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to happen. So let's look at superheat. Let's look at TD. Like I always say, give me those pressures, convert that to something I can use, a temperature. And you don't have to remember all these pressures. You just know the temperature. Hey, it's below 32. It's going to freeze.
Yep.
Now we can use that, and we can find out what our superheat is. We can find out what our TD is. We can find out all this other information, but I need temperatures. Right. I don't care what your pressures are. And that makes people mad. When I say I don't care what your pressures are, like people get mad. Convert that to a saturated temperature before you call me. If you call me, my pressures look good, I'm probably going to hang up because I got like 1,000 other things to do. But if you say, hey, my temperatures are, hey, now we have some conversations. We can do stuff with that.
Yeah. You just reminded me, we have, so everybody who calls our 800 number for tech support, we record every call that comes in. And a few years ago at one of our DSG conferences, we played some samples, live actual calls. And this one guy called in and he says, hey, I've got my gauges on. I'm not sure what the pressure should be, but it looks undercharged. It's been running for a few hours. It might be overcharged.
Oh, and the pressures look normal.
And the pressures look normal. And so basically just hit everything else. And it turned out that it was only getting 120 volts instead of the 220. And so it wouldn't go into heat mode because long story short, the reversing valves are 208. So not enough. But anyway, that's
but I love that. Looks low. Pressures look normal.
Not sure what they should be.
Yes. All right. So 3 things right there. 3 reasons you shouldn't have put gauges on it to begin with.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. I volunteer from time to time doing tech support so that I stay familiar with the typical problems that we have. And a lot of it comes back to these things of sometimes we know better and we just get hung up on some habits. And sometimes people were never taught the right thing. They were just taught, pressures and these rules of thumb, it pains me to say that. And so it's, education of let's learn how to look at some stuff that's a bigger picture. And so a technician may get by with some of these rules of thumb for a while, and then they run into a problem and they need more information. So I tell people, if you're going to contact tech support, get this information. Here's a list of information that we need, and then we can help you. Like if you don't have the information, I can't help you. But if you get me the information, I can guide you to where the problem is. But the cool thing is, once they get that information, most of the time they're finding the problems themselves. It's leading them to find the problems. They're like, oh, I found it. And I never hear back from them. I was like, did you get that information? Oh, yeah, I did, but I found the problem. So it's a beautiful thing when you give them a path to solve their problems for them.
Right. Yeah, people are like, I found the problem. No thanks to Ty.
Yes, and I like that. Like, you figured it out. Like, that's what I want. I want you to figure it out. I want you learning and growing. And it's cool when people are able to solve their own problems.
Yeah. When I had a young tech that would call me up, they'd be on a job site. I'd be across town or across the state, and I go, what's the voltage? Good. Everything's. I hate that too. It's good. I go, listen. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to get me the pressure of the evaporator, the pressure. Give me write all this down. Blah 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 blah. Give me about 20 things, and I say, then call me back. Don't call me back unless you have all this, and never call me again unless you've done this first. It's like, I haven't done. I go, what have you done? Nothing. I haven't done anything. I wanted to talk to you. So you got to do something. I can't help you if you do nothing.
I want something related to airflow, depending on what tools you have. I actually want to know the CFM, but at least duct pressure, something with airflow. I want to know what kind of metering device. I want to know your superheat. your subcooling, your TD, your delta T, and your condenser TD. I mean, those are the basic numbers I want to start off with, and the SEER rating of that system. And then with that, I can guide to the next step.
So that is interesting. How is the SEER rating, knowing the SEER rating, going to help you? I'm curious there.
So if we look at the outdoor unit, the condensing temperature is going to be so many degrees higher than the air coming into that condenser. And the SEER rating is a big part of that number. So back when I started, like everything was 35. It's just like, oh, your condensing temperature should be 35 degrees above your ambient. But now that's like we had 10 SEER systems, yeah. So now we have 13 SEER and gosh, like 18 SEER systems, and you guys have incredible,
23, 25, something
unimaginable.
Like that, yeah.
So as we make more efficient systems, we're having more surface area, more coils, better heat transfer. So instead of having to have a big temperature difference, we can have be closer to the air temperature.
Interesting.
So we don't need as much pressure, and it makes the system more efficient. So if we look at our TD, it's going to be closer to the air temperature. So a higher SEER system will have a lower TD, meaning your condensing temperature will be closer to the air temperature, usually like around 10 degrees. On like high 18 SEER, your condensing temperature will be about 10 degrees above your ambient. If you get an old refrigeration or unit from the 80s, early 90s, you're looking at like a 35 degree difference. So knowing the SEER of that system, I can tell how close the condensing temperature should be to the ambient temperature of the air coming in.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
We need an explosion sound put in there.
Genius. It's brilliant is what it is.
Yeah.
So, this I could talk about this all day long because a lot of this stuff I've forgotten. It's been a while since I've actually touched tools, and I kind of miss that.
Contractors checked all the obvious stuff that we talked about. What are some of the symptoms of an undercharge?
Undercharge system, we're going to look for a high superheated vapor. Too much superheated vapor means not enough liquid. And I'm going to see a low subcooled liquid. So that means I don't have enough liquid in the condenser, low subcooled liquid. Superheat, too much superheated vapor. High superheated vapor means also not enough liquid. So I got a starved condenser, a starved evaporator cooler. They're both starved. I don't have enough refrigerant in either one. Well, we know that we're going to need to add a refrigerant.
And again, after checking everything else first.
We've already checked airflow. We've already checked our metering device, like just generally speaking.
And most importantly, check for a leak. Don't just add refrigerant unless it's 4:00 on a Friday. But no, check for a leak.
Speaking of leaks, I always see leaks in the supermarket. It's always right next to the lettuce, the leaks. You guys talk about food.
This is another one of those.
Now, is lettuce acidic?
Oh, well, yes, but that's the leaks, the food. The actual.
Steve, I was trying to get your attention. It's like lettuce is not acidic; it's a leaf. No, I saw it come. I saw that. I go, no, Steve's not getting this at all.
No. The reason I was going somewhere else because I've done work. I did some side work for a produce shipping company. And all of the evaporators where the sweet peppers and all the peppers were, all the evaporators were completely corroded.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's just so much acid in that. And they would bring in so much produce that, and I was blown away. I look at these evaporators and they're huge walk-in coolers. And I'm like, why are these things completely corroded to the point where there's nothing left? And the guy, it's the peppers. It's the peppers. And I'm like, what are you talking about, the peppers? I just never thought about that. So yeah, you got me.
Yeah. And on that same thing about that, our houses are also will respond to the chemicals in our house. So like it'd just be easy if we could blame the manufacturer for having leaking coils, which I have an opinion on that. But also some of the houses that we have, they're so sealed up and they don't have any outside air coming in through proper ventilation and proper filtration. So the same air of the house, for example, foam or all the chemicals or hairsprays or candles that we're burning, it becomes a chemical soup.
You got the VOC.
And that stuff will also affect evaporator coils, and it can speed up the corrosion, just like the foods will affect it in a refrigerator, the houses. So monitoring the airflow of a house can be important. So if you're having a customer and they're having lots of evaporator leaks, you've already changed that evaporator coil out a couple times, put a monitor in there, start measuring the VOCs in that house, and that can help give you some solutions. Maybe you need some fresh air coming in. Maybe you need to do some other testing, and there's a solve for that. So
yeah. And think about it. I know we're not talking about indoor air quality, but you're right. The houses are super insulated. They're nice and tight. So I always say this: the house I grew up in was built in 1901. If it was windy and you had a candle lit, the candle would flicker. that was fresh air exchanges.
Yeah.
We were getting fresh air coming in, so it was healthy. I mean, it wasn't very efficient energy-wise, but it was healthy. Now you got these tight houses and everything. The detergents that are in your laundry room, the sprays you're using, to your point, the aerosols, the countertops, if they're Formica countertops, the carpeting, wall-to-wall carpeting is one of the worst things you can have in your house for indoor air quality. Right? But everything is breaking down. The paints, I love these marketing schemes that the paints put out there, fast drying paint. Okay, what makes it fast drying? Oh, the VOCs.
Yes, exactly right. Yes.
So, but anyway, but that's an important thing, and Sean Taus would tell you it's called formicary corrosion.
Yes, formicary corrosion. Yes,
Yeah.
or ant nest corrosion.
Yeah,
And so I just want to make a point on that: is seal the house tight, but ventilate right. So we do want, but we want to seal it tight, but we do want controlled ventilation. So a lot of times people are like, oh, the old houses should be drafty. It's like, no, we want both. We want a sealed house and then proper ventilations. Just sealing a house alone can cause more issues like what we're talking about with coil leaks. So I've literally had customers where the company, they stopped calling the company and said, look, I need you to fix this. I'm replacing these coils all the time. The coil's under warranty, but I have to pay for all of the skilled technicians' time to do this, and then refrigerant. So we found out that there was high VOCs, and the solution was we were able to sell them a heat recovery ventilator so that we can keep the air exchanged. We put a filtration system on it, and then we got the VOCs of the house down, brought the CO2 levels down, and that's totally indoor air quality, but that was to solve the issue with the evaporator coil leaking.
yeah. I live in a ranch, and my attic was. When they built my house in the 60s, they insulated the ceiling, the floor of the attic. Mm-hmm. I had that removed, and I encapsulated the attic, and I foam sprayed, the roof itself. And right away, I noticed a huge difference. I had to put an ERV in at that point because I had to exchange the air because it was just way too humid.
You
in the
know
house.
where foaming the home came from, right?
No.
It started from back in the 80s. We actually had somebody from another planet come visit us, and he told us, foam home, foam home.
Anyway, that does it for the show. I actually appreciate this humor. I love it. I thought you were gonna go to UFI, urea formaldehyde foam insulation. That started in I think it was the 70s energy crisis. But anyway, that was good. You didn't get Steve on that one.
Bad food. There's some bad jokes going on.
Oh yeah, yeah. If Gary were here, he'd say, they're not selling these yardsticks anymore. They don't make them any longer.
Right.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, we were at a training, one of our instructor meetings, and he was walking around with a yardstick, and Gary just kept saying over and over, Lowe's they don't make these yardsticks any longer. They don't make these yardsticks any longer. And I got my head buried in the computer, and I'm okay, Gary. Yeah, all right. And we're all just sitting there, and then finally it caught on. I was like, Gary.
Yeah, but he at least Ty, if he tells a joke that stinks, he's probably going to stop. But Gary just kept on going. You had to react to it.
He'll keep going until you know where he's going with it. But.
Now, when I talk about getting these other numbers, sometimes people get frustrated, and they're saying, you're just making it more complicated. And I'm not trying to make things more complicated. I'm trying to get more information for better solutions. So I'm not saying that we have to check VOCs in every single house we go to, but now if you're seeing a pattern, hey, now you have more information, you can solve bigger problems.
Again, comparing it to the medical field, right? The doctor's going to come in and listen to your heart, but based on other things that you tell him and information you give him, you know what, I need an EKG.
Yes.
Because the blood pressure is not good enough. Your pulse is not good enough. Let's do an EKG. It's the same thing. You have to listen as a technician. You have to listen and observe the symptoms. What's going on? Just something as simple as compressors. You replace a compressor, you have to find out what killed that compressor.
Yes.
Or the next one's going to die.
Absolutely.
If you're replacing a coil, you can't just blame the manufacturer and say, oh, it must be a defect, because it's probably not. It's more likely that it's something else. Let's find out why. Now you got to start looking further into it. You can't just replace the coil and be done with it.
I worked for a major compressor manufacturer, and they said they had a 2% failure rate. And then they showed like the breakdown. And I was like, come on, 2% failure rate, come on. And so I actually went to the guys that had the teardown labs, and I got to spend time with them, cutting them open. And they were showing me, hey, do you see this? Do you know what causes that? And they had exactly everything that caused it, because they make them fail to know what caused all these in the labs. And I got to see firsthand what causes these failures. And so I started cutting compressors open and doing autopsies on them. And then once I knew what killed the old one, I could save the life of the new one. And I found out, yeah, there's actually a very small amount of compressor failures. It's usually something else killed it, like refrigerant flood back, or high compression ratios, or the voltage issues coming to it, or there's a whole diagnostics, a whole nother class on just compressor diagnostics. But it goes back to charge. If we're only looking at pressures, it's easy to overcharge a system or undercharge a system, or have an imbalance, and not know what's happening. So if we go beyond that and start looking at superheated vapor, what's happening in the evaporator coil, subcooled liquid, what's happening in the condensing coil, and then we start looking at, hey, look at my suction saturated, where are my refrigerants boiling? How is that compared to the return air temperature, the TD? How is the condenser TD? How is it compared to the refrigerant condensing versus the outside air temperature? That's more information I can use. And then also the delta T, the difference between the return air and the supply air. And when I say this, people's like, they have this number in their mind, like it should always be this number. And the number can be as low as 12 and as high as 28, depending on the conditions. And there's some apps out there that can calculate this. But if you go into the performance data, you can actually calculate exactly what the TD should be, or the delta T should be under those specific conditions.
Right.
If the outdoor temperature is here and indoor temperature there, that's capacity. And then you can actually look at what your humidity is coming in, and that's going to be latent heat. So if you're dehumidifying, it's 970 BTUs of energy to take 1 pound of water, change state from a vapor to a liquid. So if you're getting a bottle of water coming out of your drain, that's 970 BTUs of your capacity that's made that happen. So if you're using your capacity, you're spending your capacity to buy that dehumidification, you have less money left to change the sensible heat, which means you're going to have a difference in your delta T. So the humidity plays a part in that. So you have a dry climate, like I've lived in Las Vegas. Hey, you had really big delta T's because you're spending all of your money to be able to change the temperature of the air. And you're in Florida, we had a lot smaller delta T's because we're spending some of our money on dehumidification and latent cooling, and we didn't have as much left to spend on the sensible heat change.
Mind blown.
Yeah,
Fantastic stuff, Ty.
It is all good stuff. And by the way, when I started in this business and it was in cooling, 15 to 18 degree delta T across the coil, regardless. It doesn't matter what the temperature was, what the humidity was. It's 15 to 18. That was a rule of thumb. And if you get 19 degrees, something's wrong.
So I was taught that same way, and then I was working with this guy, and he's like, he just would adjust the fan speed to get what he needed. It's like, look, I don't have to change the charge. I can adjust the fan speed and perfectly charge the system. But that just doesn't make sense to me. And that's what led me to, like, why? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around that. And then I started learning about delta T and all the things that affect it, such as your capacity of your system, the humidity, temperature, and the airflow. And so then it was like, I learned, it's like this big secret, like this big hidden missing part of the puzzle. And it's cool when you start learning those things, you start seeing it. And yeah, when you start first looking at it, it can be overwhelming. But now we have apps like the Measure Quick app that will give you all this information instantaneously. So you don't have to spend the time manually calculating it like I did back in my day.
Right.
Like it'll do this for you. Yeah. And now I foresee that in the future, we have all this really awesome variable refrigerant capacity that's having all these sensors. So they're measuring all this stuff already, and it's hidden in the algorithms. So imagine it's just a matter of time before that information will be available to the techs, and we can see what's happening with the system by looking at those numbers.
Well, we can do that with maintenance tool now. It measures it every minute. But I was going to talk about that. You got to overcharge, undercharge. What's the compressor doing? We're able to measure it with our systems, and that's going to shut the compressor down in an undercharge situation. The pressure's going to overheat. It's also going to shut it down when it floods, when that temperature goes down to 32 degrees in the compressor shell. So we have that
good
on our systems. It's fantastic. But when you walk up to a regular split system where you don't have that, it's invisible to us, You're gonna have to, like you said, Paul. You have this touchy feely. You can just touch the compressor.
If I could add one sensor to protect the system from being undercharged, everybody thinks of pressure switches. If I could add one sensor, it would be a discharge line thermostat 6 inches from the compressor.
That's
because if your discharge line temperature gets above 225, you know that your discharge superheat's too high, so you know your incoming temperature is too high. It's going to shut the compressor down.
Yeah, and how much hotter if you're measuring that
Oh.
6 inches from the compressor?
Like
what is it going to be?
300 and something inside, where your oil starts to break down. You
Yeah.
start having deposits in there,
Yeah.
carbon deposits,
Yeah.
lack of lubrication. Your oil is no longer a lubricant. It's just in the way.
Yeah.
And then
And that-
also, if you lose oil, so say all my oil is logged in the evaporator coil. Even if my charge is good, that can cause your discharge temperature to rise because they have all this moving parts without lubrication. So the discharge line thermostat will see that and it can shut the system down and protect it. So having that discharge line thermostat like you guys have it's like the most important single-handed sensor that I would add to a system.
Yeah, and
That-
all of our systems have
Yeah,
it.
they have
and,
that.
and it's a lifesaver for
Yeah.
the technician.
In my experience, that's been an overlooked value
Yes.
for many years because that tells you a lot about the system right there. Like the compressor amps tell you how much work the compressor's doing. That temperature right there is going to tell you a lot about that compressor. It's going to tell you if the compressor's about to have a heart attack or a stroke or just
Yes.
drop dead or whatever, or it's not doing anything.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those it's one of the handful of vitals we call it. The vitals that we look at. And the compressor temp is right there. TH4 for us, it's TH4.
Yeah.
And it's thermistor number 4. It's right up there. That's the first one. I tell all my students working on VRF, working on M&P, that's the first sensor you should be looking at.
And by the way, when I mentioned I was touchy-feely, that's the one pipe I will not touch.
Yes. Oh yeah, I have some stories about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I've had to reach in to heat pumps before to reach into something, and your arm touches that pipe.
Yep.
It's like, yow, you're gonna know it.
And the fan's right there next to it, so you pull your hand away,
Yeah.
and then it's just
You got all your fingers?
I do.
Okay, all right. Okay.
They're all cut up, but I
Yeah,
have them all there.
yeah. Not mine. My hands are nice and soft now because I don't work with tools anymore. Anyway,
Well, Ty, thank you so much for joining us on this 2 episodes this week. I know a few people that are going to be really excited to hear your name, to see your name on these episodes.
I think
and then-
more than a few people.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going to be happy.
Yes. I'm just thinking of,
I know.
yeah, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, his friend.
But yeah, I'm excited to go back and re-listen to this and just kind of absorb what you were saying because it's a different, just I want to listen without being behind the mic.
Well, I have ADHD, so I was only listening to about 10% of what he said. So I'll go back. I'll listen to this a few more times. Like if I listen 9 more times, I get 10% each time. It may be good, but thank you so much, Ty. And we want to have you on again. So you have a standing invitation.
Great.
You come up to New England. If you're in this area again, you call us and let us
Well, wait
know.
a minute. We're going to be in Vegas in March.
Are we bringing this podcast?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. We didn't bring.
We
this
didn't bring
last
it
time,
last year.
but we may need to bring it again. Bring it this time.
Yeah, you're going to be in Vegas in March?
I'm not sure. I have to look at the grit camps are the highest priority, so we're going to see what comes out. It's just going from Vegas to Florida, Florida back to Vegas. It's
yeah,
we just got to look at the logistics. So.
Yeah. All right. We didn't bring this with us last year, but anyway, you travel all over the place, so you're up here. You let us know
We'll do
Yeah.
that.
if we're going to be in any same event together. We're definitely going to get you on because the one thing I like to do more than anything else, well, not more than anything else, but it's probably in the top 25 things I like to do is learn.
Oh, me too. 100%. Like, no matter what you do, you have to keep learning. You have to keep growing
Yeah.
in the field. Well, for one thing, things are changing fast. There's a lot of new
Absolutely.
stuff, but there's also things that we've learned. I had really good people that I really admire, and they're really smart, good people, but they taught me things that weren't correct.
Wrong.
And so having to relearn stuff is important, but also learn things on a deeper level. I still go back to basics and seeing how I can improve and do better. So the fact is, we have to keep learning, but it also builds curiosity, builds excitement when you go back to some of these things and learn from different people.
That's
Different
it. I say that
viewpoints
all
is
the
important.
time. Yeah. It's funny because I had a guy when I was brand new in the field or just getting into it. I had one guy tell me, don't even bother hooking up your high side hose. You just need to know what your low side's doing. It's like go on this call. Yeah, the low side's awful low. Let me just add some refrigerant. Right? Then nothing's happening. The low side's not changing very much. And then the things, when you look back at the things you didn't know, and you didn't know what you didn't know and what you've learned.
Yeah, even leaving high school, technical, vocational school. They gave us a set of yellow jacket gauges, and they said you can do everything in the field with these gauges, and even pull a vacuum. Sure, you can pull a vacuum, but now how things evolved, right? Now we're learning that bigger vacuum hoses, and you proved that in your video, that's for sure.
Yeah. So Ty, once again, thank you so much. I hope everybody enjoys it. For those of you listening, I think we're done with the heat pump summit. I think.
Yeah, it's coming to a close.
We don't know what order this is going to go in, but thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yep.
Thanks, Ty. Take care.